So what I'm seeing is them trying to find back doors to get the same thing in that they got caught kind of bringing in through the front door and have been kind of called out for. And you're seeing a lot of kind of these little institutional games to keep the people in power and protecting. But the main thing that I actually see that keeps that going is exactly what you said as well. Well, we have to be winsome. We have to be kind. We have to be nice. And I've dipped into my I know we're in Arizona. Don't worry, I'm not confused. My Utah, your northern neighbor is too damn nice. And they're getting niced right into tyranny because they won't say no. And I'm not about to preach some theology to you, but when Jesus said that the meek shall inherit the earth, meek doesn't mean laying down. It means taking action when you know you're supposed to. And otherwise, keeping your hands to yourself. So what I'm seeing is that there's this play being done there where it's, well, don't name the names, like you said. Don't call them out. They're still your brother. They're not. They're not even Christian. They've adopted massive elements, whether they realize it or not, of a new theology. If they don't realize it, they need to be rebuked. They need to be corrected, and hopefully they get back on the right path. If they do realize it, then they're just a problem, and they're not even a Christian. So what I see is this kind of scramble to bring that same stuff in through the back doors, where the front door has now been barred to them, and then they're trying to pretend they're the ones barring the door, and then people who know what they're doing it are like, well, we can't say anything mean about them. We have to remember they're still our brothers and sisters. And it's this kind of what I told when I spoke in Utah about a month ago, because they told me that the problem is how nice they all are. What I said was, there's a big difference between, this is the thing with the meekness, there's a big difference between niceness and enablement. You're not being nice or kind to somebody and enabling them to do something harmful. You're not being like, we use the language of enablement to talk about addiction a lot. You're not being kind to an addict to facilitate their problem. If you go to Al-Anon or whatever they're going to tell you, you have to learn how to detach your emotions so that you can watch them hit rock bottom, because that's the only way they're going to make a correction. Maybe it's not that bad in all these cases, but if you're being nice and unwilling to rebuke or call out or point out or explain or name the names, these are the people doing this, this is how they're doing it, this is why they're doing it, this is what I know of it, and let's have a conversation about this, let's get this out in the open, then you're facilitating or you're enabling. And I see an awful lot of that from the so-called guard. I see a lot of distraction and word games as well, of course. Oh, it doesn't mean that, he didn't mean that, he just meant that, And so there's a lot of these kind of positioning games to, again, remain in the positions that they've been abusing so they can keep sliding in through side doors. Well, they got stopped from bringing in the front door. That's what I see looking in. I see the church is in a lot of trouble. I honestly, I told you back in 2018, early in the year, I remember we were having a phone call and I laughed at you and I was like, dude, the church is just going to split. You're not going to stop it.
Right.
It's just going to break because these people will not be compromised with. And eventually the other side is going to, conservative side is going to hit a point where they can take no more. And they're just going to say, all right. Then the convention's going to have a big, giant Generation X divorce.
It's yummy time. Oh, yes.
Well, we're already rolling. What's up? This is Chris.
This is Kevin.
You hear me? So, what should we talk about?
Some stuff. It's been a minute again.
Has it?
Oh, it's always crazy with me during the summer. So my apologies, everybody. I've been grinding. So.
I do too many podcasts in a row with all these atheist guys, and we start getting too salty.
Yeah,
I need to reel back in.
I'm your salty, true believing friend.
This George Soros one that you sent me, what is that?
Well, I mean, it just kind of plays into, I guess we just jump in. I don't know where you want to jump in at.
Yeah, just jump. I mean, it's probably easier just to start talking to get into this because I kind of don't know the starting point. It's just a big fluff of a mess of stuff.
So one of the central topics that I guess we were wanting to address is the big buzzword over the last 2 weeks on the internet, which is Christian nationalism.
They say that in this article?
Oh, no, that article was written in 2006.
Oh, what does that say? Let me pull it. What's it talk about? Because I haven't even read it yet.
Well, okay, so, I mean, we're talking about, like, well, why is this a thing? Why is Christian nationalism a thing? I guess There were some issues with Marjorie Taylor Greene kind of like owning her place as a Christian and owning her place as liking her country. So that's a thought crime nowadays. And anything that Marjorie Taylor Greene does is a thought crime anyway. So
Yeah, but this is a strange one where they kind of got her to walk into the trap of they got her to walk into using that term that they've been trying to popularize.
right.
And
So and she kind of did, and of course they, just crucify her for it, for owning it. But so I mean, the question is why is this even a thing? Okay, and I've been kind of paying attention to a lot of stuff that's conspiracy theory. Of course, there's lots of evidence behind anything that's conspiracy theory anymore. I mean, what's the joke? I'm running out of conspiracy theories because all mine came true.
yeah.
So, but I mean, this was an article written back in 2006, and it kind of talks about the controversial person Jorge Soros.
Yeah, I guess you can't say a name.
Just to try to get
Jorge Soros.
okay. His background is really interesting. If you haven't looked into it, you probably should. His forte is to destabilize nations, actually. And one of the things he's been pushing for, he does this through a lot, creating a lot of NGOs and a lot of policy stuff, a lot of lobbying, a lot of paying politicians money, bankrolling DAs has been a big thing for the last here in the States. So for the last, I remember if none of you ever saw it, but Newt Gingrich was on Fox of all networks. Of course, Fox is completely undermined, but this was a telltale moment for that when he was talking about Jorge bankrolling DAs on the local level. They actually got pissed at him and told him he couldn't say that.
Both Harris and Biden have talked very proudly about what they call progressive district attorneys. Progressive district attorneys are anti-police, pro-criminal, and overwhelmingly elected with George Soros's money, and they're a major cause of the violence we're seeing because they keep putting the violent criminals back on the street.
Oh, what did he say? What did he say? What oh my God! What did he say? Oh, go on. Listen, so go to everyone. Get one. What? Listen to me. Oh, listen to me. Listen to me. Listen to me. Crazy harlot. Listen. You need to cut out his tongue. We can have no mention of the Soros man. Cut it. Cut your tongue. Remember?
I'm not sure we need to bring Joe Githalos into this. I was going to say you get the last word, speaker.
He paid for it. I mean, why can't we discuss the fact that millions of dollars he
I
spent?
agree with Melissa. George Soros doesn't need to be a part of this conversation.
So it's verboten.
All right.
So that was interesting. But this kind of goes in and talks about what a lot of the policies that he's pushing, a lot of his own foundations. I mean, he started this Open Society and Open Borders Foundation. I don't know when, but I'd say that it's probably early 2000s, if not even earlier than that. I mean, he's been behind this for a long time. So anyway, this is just kind of talking a little bit about that. And I believe that a lot of what's going on right now is just, well, if you want to talk about the commies, it's kind of all involved with that. If you want to talk about World Economic Forum, all these things are pushing for the dissolution of the identity, and they put that in the frame of nationalism. Okay, if you love your country, if you want your country to do good, then you're evil, because we now, and this also plays in with a lot of the postmodern stuff, because we can't demonize anything that's different than us now. You're a xenophobe, you're all that stuff. So anyway, I don't know. It's just that kind of came up in my mind that I just kind of wanted to bring that up, because this stuff has been a long time coming, as we're aware.
It's been a long time coming, but the word Christian nationalism is probably, I don't know when, but it's probably like a recent decision to let's land on that word. I mean, there's probably a number of different words they could have chosen to mean kind of the same thing, but so I looked up just the Google trends of Christian nationalism.
Mm-hmm.
This one's just over the last 3 months, and then over the last 5 years. It's of course, that's shot through the roof, which we know that these designs have been going on a lot longer than this, but why suddenly recently, and especially 3-4 weeks ago, you suddenly hear people saying, "No, Christian nationalism, oh my gosh," and it's because it's a perfect boogie word to go along with the January 6th stuff. It's showing the
in the election cycle.
Yeah, in the election cycle. But I don't know. I think it's even beyond election cycle. It might be like the perfect boogie word, like Al Qaeda, to come full circle to that full demonization of what you're saying. And it might be the word. Like, I do think it's like the zenith of landing on a word that, okay, maybe they wanted to say that all the way back then, but they're just now crystallizing. We've said it now. We've said that this is the big, bad, scary word.
Right.
And I think even Dan Carlin, Dan McClellan, who we were zinging on the other week, some of his stuff where he's jumping on calling the evangelicals, the Christian nationalists, and trying to dogpile on that, all while in the middle of that time, the Under the Banner of Heaven stuff's going on, which is obviously trying to group Mormons into the same demonic box, which, I mean, I appreciate that if you listen to his criticisms of the Under the Banner of Heaven thing, that he recognizes that that's happening to the Mormons, but he's not doing any favors by helping jump on the dog pile of the other thing. That's playing the old commie games of helping them turn on the other people to and not really realizing they'll just eat you last type stuff. It's so cowardly.
Well, I'll just come out and say it. I think that his politics is his religion.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
Not his religion that's professed.
Yeah, for sure.
And I don't have any qualms saying that. So.
No, neither do I. One of the first times I heard it kind of start spouting around recently was out of John Larson's pie hole.
Yeah.
And that wasn't just this time. He brought it up in some older podcast. He started saying it, and then I started hearing it out of other words. And as soon as like a word like that starts coming out of certain people with similar politics, I go, whoa, we got a memo, a talking point memo here. Like the memo was sent out to the NPCs. We're hearing it go through right now. Let's take a look at what he just said recently. Should we just start off that one?
Yeah. Yep.
I'm not afraid to say John Larson is an NPC. I think he even says it in this episode that he doesn't follow anything. He doesn't know what's going on out in the world, but he'll consider himself highly informed and updated because he reads a few Politico and New York Times articles. And so it's just like the epitome of getting the voice of the mainstream media.
But
here
NPC for him is non-playable communist.
All right. So this was just last night or 2 nights ago. It started popping up again. Let's hear them talk about it.
John Larson, this is great.
It's great.
Mind if I make a couple comments, and then Kara, we also want to hear from you.
I mind.
So the first thing I wanted to say, John, is that it's not just an issue of sort of Liz Cheney, Mitt Romney Republicans versus MAGA Republicans, starting with Newt Gingrich or even Reagan and kind of the 80s Republicanism. They perceive that Christians and Republicans made this kind of holy or unholy alliance where Republicanism became synonymous with Christianity.
Did it mention that the 80% of the churches like resigning?
I think it's coming up.
Okay.
Lean towards progressive politics and liberal politics, which is just a reality that any good prophet maybe would have been able to foresee. But once you tie your religion to a particular political party, then even if only 30 or 40% of your congregations are the minority party, the liberal or progressive party, guess what? You lose 30 to 40% of your membership. And that is one of the main drivers of disaffection, not just
because you made their politics higher on the scale than religion, which has always been a goal
from Mormonism, but from religion writ large, is that too many Gen Zers, too many Gen Xers and millennials have progressive politics, more not just with the liberal, Democratic Party, but with Bernie Sanders or others. And they feel like, well, my religion's too Republican, so I'm out of here. So, it's stinging the church in more ways than just on the Republican side.
Oh, absolutely. And I tell you, I follow the evangelical and that Christian movement more closely than I do the church these days. And the same thing is fighting out, maybe even more so amongst them, as more and more evangelical preachers embrace basically what's emerging as Christian nationalism.
Yeah, he says he follows it. He means he read those 2 or 3 New York Times Atlantic articles.
Yeah.
And Mormons should claim they were the OG Christian nationalists, by the way. They've been squatting on that territory for a long time. But there's more and more of these congregations embrace Christian nationalism. They're losing the moderates, but they're also attracting people who really don't even understand Christianity very much from talking to them. You know, they've
You always get Christianity good and well explained to you by atheists and unbelievers.
Yeah.
Clearly never read the Bible. They don't know what's in it. But they've got these American nationalistic, right-wing conservative points of view that are getting mismatched into a religion. And
the Bible actually says socialism. It actually says communism. It says Marx is the truth. It says it in like John 1:42. Marx is the truth. That's what it says.
Seeing the emergence of a new religious order, a new religious movement in American Christian nationalism. It'll be really interesting to see where the church falls.
When you see it, it's like his face almost morphs into that gray NPC.
Yeah. Either that, or did we ever call him out for looking like what was the Muppet that we were saying that he is?
Yeah, Sweetums.
Sweetums, that's right. Yeah. Do we?
Hey guys, wait for me.
Falls on all this. I think the church is nervous. When a bunch of violent Christians get together.
A bunch of violent Christians.
I think conservative Mormons.
Okay, wait a second. Can you point to me any Christian, like any acts upon
the Laffertys?
Hang on. No. Let's say within the last 3-4 years, has there been any violent acts by
Bundys?
Like, can you name me one person?
The Bundys have guns.
Oh, that's right.
They pointed a gun.
Yeah.
Somebody saw it. Somebody for sure saw that.
Yeah. In a couple of years, we're going to hear it as the Bundy massacre.
Mm-hmm.
Did we ever address the fact that we went to school with Bundy's wife?
I don't think we have. I actually sat next to her in my science class for a year and had a big old crush on her.
Yeah, well, everybody did.
Mormons usually don't.
I never would have guessed that she is like that though. I was kind of
I didn't.
She was a dancer, right?
Yeah, well, she was on drill team and
she was on drill team. She's a dancer and she always danced to, like, at that time, rap and R&B music and all that stuff.
Yeah. They all did that hip hop stuff. Yeah, no, every guy in the school had a crush on her.
Yeah.
I would have never thought to, you know.
Yeah.
In that equation, that these guys really, it's kind of like Hitler and.
I never would have thought she would have become like a Hitler-loving, murderous Christian nationalist.
And a Mussolini. Hitler was only tolerating Mussolini to protect his southern flank as long as he could, but there was no idea that the Italian fascist state and the German fascist state were going to hold hands and skip into the future.
Is that the whole thing? He brings it up several times throughout this whole podcast where, once again, they'll tell you how to do Christianity right.
I think it's an interesting parallel that John brings up. 30 to 40% of the church's membership. So a third of the host of the membership of
Oh yeah, that's it. You keep
are going to bail out because are going to bail out because of equity politics.
Yeah. Let me see here.
Maybe we just one more thing too. Like as I see it, the church, and I think we've kind of been waiting for that, stand up to the Balrog moment,
Yes.
But, and I don't know if necessarily we'll get it or not, but like as I see it, if you're looking at like prophecy and stuff like that, it does talk about there's going to be a major sifting of wheat and tares. And I believe that personally, in my outlook, I've kind of been expecting that there is going to be kind of that break. And
we were talking yesterday that Jacob Hansen was bringing up. He was on Streeter yesterday. Mm-hmm. We had a long podcast chit-chatting with everybody on there, and he brought up getting to the point of being fine with letting people go their way if they want to leave, and he's talked about that a lot, and I agree with that type of thing. And I remember some people talking and chit-chatting in the thing, and they're finger waving and hand waving at Cardin and Brad from Midnight Mormons. And I remember wanting to bring up the thing again, that it just seems to me like the biggest finger wavers all go to the way of the ex-Mormonism. And there's a level of me that says, let them go, let them do that. 'Cause those were almost more of the people that I didn't like in Mormonism. And every one of them you let come into Mormonism, it makes ex-Mormonism more irritating and Mormonism less irritating.
Yeah.
Let them go.
Yeah. So here's a you'll have to cut to this, the Lindsay and Tobias, maybe if we just let everybody just go and don't care, then they'll come running back, like that whole scene in Arrested Development.
I'm not going to click on it, but this is just some of the stuff that starts pumping through the New York Times and all that sort of stuff.
Far right
And
West.
yeah, here's another one, because I looked up Meldrum, because he said Mormons are the OGs Christian nationalists, and that's one of the reasons Dehlin was
Meldrum said that, or
no,
Larson?
Larson just said that. He just barely we just heard it a second ago.
Yeah, because we know that Meldrum is a far right,
Yeah.
national.
So I looked it up with that thing, and you remember that Dehlin felt he had to harangue Meldrum without letting him get a voice out. And he said, it's dangerous. It's dangerous. It's because they're all learning to hallucinate at the boogeyman of Christian nationalism. And so I just looked up Christian nationalism and Meldrum. Trump ally defends Christian nationalism as good and healthy Mormon group digging for a scriptural city of Zarahemla. And that's why that's one of the reasons why Kara literally got to the point that she was hyperventilating and couldn't work on the podcast anymore, because she thought she was working with an Al-Qaeda terrorist.
Well, they're trying to frame it too, like this nationalism is like a Zionism type thing.
Let's see. I'll go ahead and let's look at the stinking Marjorie Taylor Greene one, just to get more of a grounding in what's going on. Well, but like I said, even this Marjorie Taylor Greene thing came out after they were already pushing it, and then she went and kind of fell into the trap of going, yes, I am a Christian and I am a nationalist. She even sort of does it right here in this video. But at the same time, she knows that's what they're doing. But then she's also not going to deny that I am a Christian and I am a nationalist. So what's your problem? And it's the same linguistic game they'd play with white supremacy.
It's the Foucauldian redefining of what nationalism means.
Yeah, they said, are you a white person? You're white. And are you in a culture that's supremely white? Like, Larson tried to play this game with me. Like, are you in a culture that has a dominance of white, like the majority of it around is white? So
you get the white privilege test on you.
So well, they basically do the Mott and Bailey of trying to switch something to be white majority also means white supremacist. So I meant, white supremacist. And you go, that the past 100 years when people were talking about white supremacy, they weren't saying it that way.
Didn't that Vox test, or whatever, was it Vox that put out that white privilege test? Didn't that get like memory hold and taken down? Was it Vox or Vice that like put out that white privilege test, like that you could see if you had white privilege, and then it got memory hold or something like that?
The original white privilege test was actually the academic paper. Is that what you're talking about, or was there another one that
I can't remember?
created?
Well, I think that they might have. I think they took that and like put it into like a like a test online or something like that, or
they probably try to do that or something. But the thing is,
I remember that
the term white privilege comes from Peggy McIntosh.
Yeah,
Peggy McIntosh's original paper in the 80s about that was she just made like a factor analysis test. That was her whole paper. And once just earlier today, I was on Streeter and we talked about idea laundering and how this has all been crap academics going back forever. And Peterson's made the point since forever that so some of Peterson's personality testing stuff or whatever is based off of factor analysis. And to do factor analysis, you have to do a lot of rigorous work to prove that what you're measuring is reliable and valid. So you're not asking the same question over and over and over again, or asking the same question in different ways. So you have to make sure that each question on the test is actually a different question, or if it is the same question, you realize it's the same question. So you're testing to see if they're answering it accurately the same time each way. There's a lot that goes into proving that your factor analysis is somewhat grabbing some accurate reading of what that person thinks. And then in the end of it all, it's still just what that person thinks to themselves. But her factor analysis was crap. It was craptastic. It was just, do you think do you think it's like a lady who was thinking on an afternoon? Do you think that if you went to the movies and you were at the movies and you could see mostly white people around you, do you think that you had privilege? And so you're supposed to answer these 12, 20 questions, and
well, I think that there started being a lot of problems that, you know, they started figuring out, oh, this doesn't work as good as we thought it did.
Yeah,
Anyway.
I don't know where to. I mean,
Sorry to get off in the weeds on that, but
no problem.
Attacking Christian. I made the mistake of reading CNN a couple of days ago, and I read a very long piece attacking Christian nationalism, which is apparently on the rise in America. And then I made another mistake. I turned over to Twitter. That's never a smart thing to do. And on Twitter, I see the same person trending for two different reasons. One of the trends was Christian nationalism. The other one was she's a Nazi. And the person trending was Republican Congressman Marjorie Taylor Greene. So I said, well, that doesn't sound right to me. A little skeptical of those trends. So I thought we should invite her on to hear straight from her what she means by all these things. Congresswoman Greene, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me on, Michael.
So first question, Twitter is forcing me to ask this. Are you now, or have you ever been, a Nazi, a National Socialist?
No, never.
Okay. I'm relieved to hear that.
Apparently, they can label you things you're not and lie about you and smear your character on Twitter, and they think that's perfectly okay. And this is what they have done to me ever since I became a member of Congress. And I'm really tired of it. I am. It hurts me. It hurts my family. It hurts my.
Yeah. We know we're all getting smeared.
They've been doing it more specifically. They've been going after you for the issue of Christian nationalism, and that this is the scare phrase du jour. So forget what CNN says about Christian nationalism. What do you say Christian nationalism is?
Well, I'm a Christian. I have my full faith in God, and Jesus is my savior. I'm not perfect. I'm definitely a sinner. I know that for sure. And that's why I put my faith in the Son of God who died on a Roman cross so that my sins could be forgiven. And that's the profession of my faith. I also believe that Jesus is the son of want are extremely wrong and sinful. So being a Christian isn't a bad thing. It actually is a really good thing for everyone. Being a nationalist means I just love my country. I love America. I'm proud to be an American.
So to them, that's like she did the well, I'm white and I am in a country where the majority are white, and so she knows that they're going to do that too. But
yeah,
she says, yeah, I am a Christian and yeah, I am a nationalist. So I don't. But they'll just take the clips out, the Media Matters type, and say, look, she agrees. She's a Christian and a nationalist.
Gotcha, bitch.
So I was going to pull. I don't know if I need to listen that much of it, but this. Doug Wilson's another one that they started hyping up and pumping up. Like, look at these evangelicals. They're agreeing they're Christian nationalists. Because he said something out and saying like, well, what countries do you want to be Christian nationalists? And he says, well, all of them. Because he's just, he's doing the thing. He's saying, well, we're evangelical Christians. We think the whole world needs to,
Yeah.
Some will say that it is not possible to make a nation into a Christian nation. Nations don't have immortal souls and cannot be Christian. To which I would reply, why did Jesus tell us to do it then?
So that's just one of them. That was 3 weeks ago. I think even before Marjorie Taylor Greene stuff started happening. And this is just him responding to all the backlash it's getting, even though he kind of knew it was coming.
So let us talk for just a moment about Christian nationalism, not the bee, and me. A couple weeks ago, I made some headlines, just like the man with the corduroy pillow. I had written a blog post in which I explained, cogently, the sense in which we should want America to be a Christian nation. We want our nation to be a Christian nation because we want all the nations to be Christian nations. We want this because we love Jesus and want to do what he told us to do. An outfit called Right Wing Watch was unsettled by it, and they had this to say about it. Quote, Christian nationalism isn't enough for radical right-wing pastor Douglas Wilson. Quote, how many of these Christian nations are there supposed to be? No set numbers given, but the simple answer is all of them. All the nations of men are to be brought into submission to Christ. Not the B then posted their reaction, along with a comment that indicated that they thought that a conservative Christian pastor ought to be able to believe conservative Christian things, but
This is the violent guy that John Larson is afraid of.
maybe that's just them. All of this naturally generated some comments in my Twitter feed, big surprise. But then I also got a letter in the old-timey mail from a woman who wanted to correct me on a few things. Because I believe that her misunderstandings are widely shared, and because they came to me on actual paper, I thought it might be good to give a brief response to some of her points. I have edited her language slightly in a few spots to make it fit this format. Quote, "It makes no sense to say that any religion, Christianity, Muslim, or whatever, should govern a nation just because that is what you want, ... It is all about our personal spiritual belief, and while that may give us comfort as individuals, none of us can force our faith on others," close quote. I would say that the first part of this is correct. No one religious system should be imposed on anyone simply because someone else happens to feel like it. Our feelings are neither here nor there. But I would want to expand the principle and say that no one worldview system should be imposed on people just because someone happens to feel like it. This applies to all of the systems: Christian, Muslim, Jew, secularist, agnostic. Nobody gets to impose on those who differ simply because of their personal opinions. But we then have a difficulty. There are millions of us, and we do need to make collective decisions. We must make decisions that have clear moral implications, and in order to sort out moral implications, there must be a moral system to do it with. Utilitarian, but some of us are not utilitarians. Hinduism, but some of us are not Hindus. Kantian, but some of us are not Kantian. Islamic, but some of us are not Muslims. Rawlsian, but some of us are not Rawlsians. If we cannot cram our religion down other people's throats, why should we get to cram our philosophy that we learned in our second year at Ball State down their throat? This is the dilemma, but the societal decisions still have to be made. The decisions we make collectively will be a natural function of what we think and assume as individuals taken all together. This is a societal consensus, and it requires no passing of laws before it forms. It requires no permission to form. Laws are eventually passed because such a consensus has taken shape. No society can exist as a society without these shared assumptions. Not only so, but those assumptions will be about foundational reality. Who are we?
At what point do you think the Media Matters guy listening for buzzwords to clip out stopped listening?
Yeah.
So he's just making the point, and then I guess doing the same thing. Even when he 3 weeks before said, "Yeah, I'm a Christian nationalist," he was reacting. He was doing. I kind of hate going back to it, but it is always what's happening. The Hegelian thing is like, so they put out the thesis. They're the ones who said, "Hey, you guys are turning to Christian nationalists," and they all responded to it. They said, "Yeah, we are." And they all said, "See," like it was some big thing.
Their controversy laundering.
Yeah.
Critical theory.
Maybe growing up in the time we grew up, like you really have to graft something onto it to make it be such the boogie word they want it to be. But they've spent so many years making that into a boogeyman. Like, well, maybe I should pull that up now, the Vincent James stuff, because we were talking about that in the life coach video, because he had a clip of the Vincent James guy saying, "Yeah, we do want to do the Handmaid's Tale to you guys," and half of what the left freaks out about now, almost more than 1984, is talking about the Handmaid's Tale. They want to turn us into the Handmaid's Tale. This is Vincent James. He used to be on YouTube. He just almost kind of like a commentator, like Tim Pool or something like that. Yeah, but he had a pretty hardcore Catholic view of the world. I don't know how else to say it. Just Catholic. It's not evangelical. So you're barking up the wrong tree with that one. But you can group them all together when it's convenient. This is their scary clip as they clip out.
We are the Christian Taliban. This is the era of Christian nationalism. Christian nationalism is on the rise, and people are thirsty for it. They are hungry.
You can see how he's laughing right there.
Yeah.
We are the Christian Taliban, and we will not stop until the Handmaid's Tale is a reality. And even worse than that, to be honest, yes, we do have to start rolling back. There was this article from The Atlantic where it's like, well, Alito is on a mission to roll back the rights of women, to roll back the past 100 years of rights that were given to women. Yes, that is what we're doing. And it's only going to get worse for you from here.
No, it's
Like an
completely
obvious,
skipped
it's an
out.
obvious troll. You know what I mean?
Yeah, East Mind, but at the same time, so
Right wing.
did you read the Mencius mold bug article I sent you?
I didn't get to that one.
So this is his most recent one on his Substack Gray Mirror. It's ChRiStIaN. I don't know if he goes by Mencius mold bug anymore. That was just his name for the unrequited whatever.
Yeah, now his real name's known well enough.
So he put out this article that says you can only lose the culture war. And basically what he's hitting at is he's talking to these three people, not specifically them, although I'm sure they are some of the three that he has in mind because they're making waves and countering headlines. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So he might be thinking of these exact three. I don't know. There's probably one or two more. Oh, I saw Dinesh D'Souza said something about that. Like, yes, we are Christian and we are nationalists. And he was reacting to it and reacting to the way he said, I think he says right in this article, "Dear hobbits, you can only lose the culture war. Even when elves use political power to impose elf culture on you, you cannot use political power to impose hobbit culture on elves." So he's the big postmodern trad right wing, prophet. I don't know what, because I'd really say he's more the starter and the person who pointed a lot of them to some of the countering theory to certain levels of academic theory that's popular right now that goes back all the way to, I just barely got done reading James Burnham's The Machiavellians, and that's kind of one of their centerpieces that they bounce off of. And I didn't realize that James Burnham was one of the main persons George Orwell had read, and a lot of what George Orwell was writing and responding to is James Burnham as well. He's an elitist. Well, all this I don't know, the dissident right. So we're talking about two different rights here. This is a world that John Larson's he's just too up his own ass to even understand that there's any difference in any of this. And I'd say the more I dig into it, I mean, there's all sorts of differences on the left too, but I think they're almost more drastic on the right. These dissident right guys look at those guys playing into the culture war, and they just not only roll their eyes at them, they almost hate them. They hate them because they think everything they should be doing what the left just did to all of us the past 50 years. That they should sneak up quietly through institutions and not make any waves on like a big cultural level, because any sort of thing that they do that gets big cultural attention like that will only get them squashed. And that's kind of what he's saying here. So people took issue with this because he's talking about the left is elves and the right is hobbits, right? But one of the things he says is that the right, anytime they get power, they use that power to use the power. And the left, anytime they get power, they use the power to get more power. And he says that's just a huge difference between the two. And that's one of the reasons the huge major cultural shift and the overtaking of the mid-level institutions happened over the past 50 years. Because they just quietly chipped away like termites, and like termites just took over all the foundations. And the right are kind of just like, I don't know, like a big, I don't know how to make it like match up to the metaphor of the termite exactly, but they're just kind of like what's a bigger pest that's just easier to squash? Rats can. Well, those also kind of get huge colonies underneath before you finally see them. It's kind of more just like, I don't know, a
raccoon.
One raccoon or a couple raccoons got in the house. You see them, they came from the outside, they grabbed the food, but you can get rid of raccoons real quick. Yeah, that's a good analogy. He argues this and puts it all out, and of course, a bunch of people took offense to it, even people on the dissident right, because it just really comes off as elitist and snooty. But if you read enough of Mencius Moldbug, because he says you guys need to leave it alone and leave it to the dark elves to go take it back, which I kind of don't know why he wouldn't use the metaphor of like Strider and the Dark Riders, who are defenders and just kind of. But I think it's because he knows purposely well that they're not that. They're not defenders in that way. They're trying to be equally elitist and snide and sneaky as the left-wing elves are. Machiavellians. They're trying to be Machiavellian. This whole thing comes across as elitist, but I've been reading more and more, and one of the concepts out of the Machiavellians and out of the dissident right is they're anti-populism in a way. They want to get a popular movement, but they think the only thing that can ever be done to overtake and beat other stuff is a equally powerful elite needs to trounce the other elite. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And then we all need to be led by that, because there is only elite. There is only being led by elitist oligarchs who will be better for us than those. I don't know. I don't know that they even imagine they'll be better for us. It's like they're fully aware of the concept of like any king can go bad at any time and be terrible. And so that's why in a weird way they're postmodern, because they
But not if they do.
yeah, they agree it's just like another power game. It's like, well, we'll be in power, so it's better.
Mm-hmm.
But what if you turn as tyrannical as they are? Yeah, but it's us.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but I mean, if you read it, I mean, it does come across as fully snooty. But a couple of dissident right guys like Distributus and Auron, I think they're getting a little bit more nuanced than just the extreme dark elves, right? You know.
Mm-hmm.
But I think they do well. Let me have the Distributus put it in his own words. We're almost like through the clips, and then we can chat through it. That'll be kind of a quicker way through the clips than normal. But it's kind of what I want to do. Is half of it is like I see all these different things, and like I pin them all together and say, all right, everybody else look at all these things all together, and then tell me what you think. If do you see what I'm seeing, you know?
Mm-hmm.
When you say that Marjorie Taylor Greene said something about nationalism, anyone who's been on Twitter or has seen Trending Topics are aware that the left wing is trying to jam this notion of Christian nationalism. Okay, guys, like if you use Christian nationalism at all, you understand at this point that this is a leftist wedge issue. This is their attempt to wedge the right-wing movement and to try to divide it. If you use Christian nationalism as a label for yourself, even to counter-signaling them, you are being a complete idiot. When people try to attach a buzzword to you, the only response is, I have no idea what you're talking about. This is silly. No one ever talks about themselves in this way. I've never heard a single right-winger talk about themselves as a Christian nationalist.
Yeah, that's what's so funny about it too. Is like there's something zombie-ish about the words they choose. You know, that's why you hear this word start bouncing around and they start making it a boogeyman, and you kind of go, but it's kind of like not exactly right to what anybody has ever really.
Yeah,
it's almost there, but it isn't. You know.
Of course, like I said, the left wing is powerful, so sometimes that they can mainstream taboos. Like you cannot just veto racism as a.
You can mainstream taboos. You can have NPC downloaded a taboo like you wouldn't believe. I cannot believe that you can get people like Larson and Kara to hyperventilate about Christian nationalism when they spent their first 40 years of their lives or whatever as Mormons. You know what I mean? It's like you know the people that they're trying to call Christian nationalists. You know them, and I know that you can like go get red in the face and say, but I know that some of them got violent. But on this planet, I'm sorry, no. On the average, if you grew up inside of a community, there was probably less violence on the inside of it.
Yep.
Concept. You cannot just veto sexism as a concept from our lexicon, or even homophobia at this stage. But when a buzzword is as newfangled as Christian nationalism, and there's no established understanding of what the word means, you do not have to play ball with it. And if you do play ball with it, you're playing right into your enemy's hands. So if that's the trap that Marjorie Taylor Greene fell into, I don't know. Shame on her. Not shame on her sounds a little bit harsh, but I mean, she in the old speak, she pulled a boner on this one, right? She really screwed up. Try, insofar as it's possible, stay away from adopting the identity that the enemy has chosen for you. Deny the frame.
Deny the frame. Yeah.
Because the frame is the problem, not the question. I mean, breaking it down. Am I a Christian? Of course I am. Am I a nationalist? Absolutely not. I think nationalism has a huge number of problems with it. And I think that figuring out what's wrong with nationalism should be a primary right-wing project. And I won't be the first to point out that nationalism is a left-wing project. It's warmed over leftism from the 19th century in its inception, and it brought in a lot of this idea of factionalism that turned out to be completely poisonous in the 20th century. That being said, is nationalism better than this horrific ideas that are coming out of things like the World Economic Forum and the decidedly anti-nationalist European Union? Yeah, in many ways, it's the lesser of two evils. But when I use the term Christian nationalism, I'm not like that nuance, that embrace of the deep sublimity of the Christian truth and that nuanced approach to the ups and downs of nationalism. That is not the conversation that I'm having. All I'm doing is writing a bad guy on my forehead and playing into left-zone morality play online.
Yeah.
And letting them persist in this.
Well, and the thing is they know it. They know it because it's like, oh yeah, Marjorie Taylor Greene, she's the type, she's trying to stand up to the Balrog. Let's put her in that position, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, the right is always the traditional right, you know, and especially the Christian right. That's it. There's two identities here. And the whole part of this is again, it's like how can we pull a Foucauldian power play on a definition? I mean, does the average person really know what nationalism mean? And is there a consensus across all platforms? No, of course there isn't. It's just like anything, you know,
or Christian for that word too.
Yeah, that's even getting muddied. You know, it's like all these identities are getting muddied. You know, but I mean, Christian is certainly more clear to most people than what the term national is.
Well, I think, like I said, I understand the point that Doug Wilson made about it, and it's the same point that Jacob Hansen and other people were making. And I think that's why I've pointed to people to Christian atheism and all that sorts of stuff, is that the Christian atheism understands that point, that you need a societal starting point, and that's a societal starting point that can get a lot of agreement. That's a pretty good one. You know, there's not a lot of other societal starting points. There's let's imagine there's one that philosophers have declared is better. You're not going to get universal agreement on it.
Right.
You're not that much. It's just not going to happen. You know.
Yeah.
It's absolutely insane. Parasocial narcissistic delusion. As
that being said, too, is those philosophers have gotten nowhere near to any sort of level of agreement. Even, I mean, there's more splitting in that than there's ever been in Christianity or any.
As a substructure of the entire global economy erupts around them, and as they plunge us into a global energy and food crisis for basically no reason whatsoever. But okay.
It's so freaky. It's only just we're laughing about. Oh my gosh, dude.
Oh, what do you do at this point, man? It's like,
but you see the game. They see the game. They know the game. They see what's going on, and you kind of wish the right wing would be more smart about it. But at the same time, too, you kind of see how Doug and Marjorie Taylor Greene and even Vincent can't get out of it. They can't get out of it. There's no getting out of it.
Yep.
They set the trap and they paint the picture, and then they say, yeah, I am. You paint the word bad guy on your own forehead.
During the January 6th attack on the Capitol, there were Trump banners and Confederate flags, the Gadsden flags. There's also Christian imagery, the wooden cross, people in prayer, the Jesus Saves slogan. Now, much of the House January 6th committee's focus so far has been on right-wing extremist groups, but there are Americans who have adopted Christian nationalism who were there as well. Samuel Perry is an associate professor at the University of Oklahoma and a co-author of The Flag and the Cross, White Christian Nationalism and the Threat to American Democracy. Professor, good to have you. Part of the reason we're having this conversation is because Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene just said that the Republican Party should become the Christian Nationalist Party. We'll get into that in a moment. But first, what is it? What is Christian nationalism?
Sure. Christian nationalism is an ideology that seeks to idealize and advocate for a fusion of American civic life with a very particular kind of Christianity. And when we say Christianity, we don't really mean people who love Jesus, who have tried to, live Christ-like lives. We mean Christianity is code word for people like us, who are conservative, natural-born citizens who think like us, who look like us. And so Christian nationalism is really this ideology that seeks to fuse and institutionalize that kind of Christianity with American policy and symbols and founding myths and our kind of deep story.
When the book says white Christian nationalism, is it almost exclusively based on race? Explain that element.
Sure. We find in all of our studies that where we're looking at these things with national survey data, we find that when white Americans hear the language of Christian nationalism, when they hear that about Christian heritage and Christian values, they tend to think with nostalgia for a time where people like us, the right kind of people. So we call white Christian nationalism this ideology that seeks to take back America for all lack of a better phrasing, white, ethnically white, racially white, traditional conservative Americans. Again, people like us, people like Marjorie Taylor Greene thinks.
Yeah. Now, there are some even in the Republican Party who would say that some of Congresswoman Greene's views are fringe. This, though, you say, is not, that this is central. This is very mainstream.
Yes, we find in survey after survey that the kinds of beliefs.
I like his face where it says, you're telling me that it's very mainstream, these Christians who like their nation. You're saying it's part of the mainstream?
I pity the mainstream white Christian.
Keep explaining to us, Craig Kilburn.
That Marjorie Taylor Greene affirms that we would be.
He has a book called The Flag and the Nation. Very, very top bestseller, released April 1st, 2022.
Proud Christian nationalists, that the Republican Party ought to be the.
He drops the word so many times. Like
party of Christian nationalism. Now, Marjorie Taylor Greene may seem
Christian nationalism, April Fools.
She is so outspoken and so blatant about this, but this is actually a very common ideology that Americans believe that America was founded on.
It's a common ideology.
That Christianity made us prosperous as a nation. That we ought to not only celebrate that path, but we ought to return to it. We ought to institutionalize Christianity as our national identity. We ought to make policy in light of it. And we ought to really privilege Christianity in the public square above other religions, and we don't have to give equal time. We don't even.
Why are they talking? This is that hatchling thing. They're talking like they hatched out of an egg yesterday.
Yeah.
They don't know that, everybody knew this about the United States of America for the past 250 years. And they're explaining it to it like they're aliens who just landed here. Or I guess, like I said, Morgoth says, like the hatchling.
Yeah.
And have to recognize other religions as much as we do Christianity.
Obviously, a natural segue into why the second half of that title is the threat to democracy.
Can we have some Chinese nationalist news, on CNN?
The threat to democracy is the next. Is
Chinese
that the
nationalism?
Is that the subtitle to every book that the left's released the past 25 years? 25. We'll give it 5 years. The threat to our democracy.
To our democracy. This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
This is extremely dangerous to our democracy. This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
This is extremely dangerous to our democracy. This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
Then confronted, because it sounds like, as encompassing as the white Christian nationalist identity is, that it's not just confronting religion, it's confronting privilege, it's confronting one's view of oneself. Steve, how do you confront something like that?
News.
Right, and you said it exactly right. I think this is an ideology that.
Look at all those books.
Mm-hmm.
1 book, 2 books, 3 books, 4 books, 5 books, 6. He's got lots of books in his brain.
That is fundamentally us versus them. It is not about maximizing space for everybody else. It does not celebrate diversity in any kind of form.
It does not celebrate just bending over and letting the whole world have its way with you. It does not support that.
And
that is the Christian. That's a way. Not nationalist, just global homo Christianity.
And it really takes the idea that this nation is for people like us, and we ought to have primary influence, and it is fundamentally anti-democratic in that regard. It is not for voter access. It is very much against maximizing democratic opportunity for everybody else.
What the crap? How would he parse that out? That they have some sort of bullshit way that they parse it out. What do you mean they're not for votes and that sort of thing? Well, they would have you use your ID card, and that means they all hate voting.
Yeah.
So how do we confront it? We have to return to our democratic principles, our idea that this is a society that celebrates legal equality and access to the vote, that we will not privilege one religious group over the other, that we don't have established religions in this country. That is a fundamentally un-American idea. And so
You can get your religion out of the school, buddy.
Yeah, no kidding.
I think it requires those of us who are concerned about this white Christian nationalist movement.
Are you concerned?
To link arms, to unite with one another, both as those of us who are people.
Both as a cult of Set and as, worshippers of Moloch.
Yeah.
We all.
But Moloch now, Dan clarified that Moloch
yes, it's
is
just
not,
a noun.
It's just it just means sacrifice, likely to the Christian God.
It's just a noun, not that man standing behind him with the glowy eyes.
People of faith, those of us who are not people of faith, but are at the same time very worried about this.
Are you very worried? Are you very worried about the ideology?
And you genuinely think in this political
Look at his concerned eyes. Look at his concerned smart face. He's got a concerned smart.
I'm looking at the transcript. It's like every 3 or 4 words is a buzzword.
But look at his concerned smart academia.
Yeah.
landscape, that would be impactful?
This guy's questions.
He's totally doing blue steel.
He sees there's so many times you can tell the person sees themselves in the viewer, but he's asking these questions like he's not bored to tears with the sent answers, like the answers aren't fully pre-scripted.
I think that's the only choice that we have is to speak truth to this kind of movement, to say, this may not be framed.
This movement that we're framing in a certain way that doesn't really kind of exist as we describe it, but we're going to describe it that way anyway.
In the sense that not a lot of people hold it. I mean, it's not, and I'm not talking necessarily about the majority of Americans who are white Christian nationalists. I'm not saying that, but I am saying that very.
Oh, he separated out the Mott and the Bailey for us. Because those other ones call themselves Christian nationalists, right? I think they got 3 people to do that: Marjorie Taylor Greene, Doug Wilson, and Dinesh D'Souza. And they're only doing that the same way he just did it right there. And they are all just doing the same logical, descriptor thing. None of them are saying, yes, we've been part of this gang. You call us, you've described us in the book, we're part of the gang.
Vocal and influential group of people who are now becoming more radicalized and militant, to say that we can push our agenda now, and this is the time. And
I just picture
they're calling to arms, kind of like what was her name who called to arms not too long ago
AOC?
on the left.
AOC probably did.
The older one, Maxine
Warren.
Waters.
Elizabeth Warren did too. We're gonna fight.
Yeah. But didn't Maxine Waters literally call to violence?
They've all said every single thing that they think they're getting Trump on here that he did not say.
Mobilize their base with this kind of angry and fearful rhetoric. It is to speak back to them and say, this is un-American.
It's all such Stalinistic tactics. It all really is. You keep thinking man, this Orwell stuff could come true. It's long since been true. This is not what conservatives are about. This is not what Republicans are about. I hope they believe that. I hope they affirm that this is a nation where religious liberty and religious diversity and racial and ethnic diversity are celebrated, valued, and we want those things to be our ideals. And so I talk to the American people like they're in the 3rd grade.
I think it requires us to link arms and to I think unite against this
except for with all the righties.
All right, Professor Sam Perry, I thank you so much, sir.
Oh, he's a professor.
Professor, what do you think he's a professor of?
I don't know. I probably got a divinity school. He's a
University of Oklahoma, PhD from the University of Chicago. Research areas: religion, culture, race, ethnicity, and gender, sexuality, inequality, collective action.
Sounds about right.
His pronouns are he, him, his. It says
he, him, they.
He's a divinity school sociologist.
Dude, I called it.
Yeah, you said it exactly right. Let's take a look here. Samuel Perry. An award-winning scholar and teacher, Dr. Perry is among the nation's leading experts on conservative Christianity and American politics. Well, he's an expert. I'm sure he is. Race, sexuality, and families, Along with numerous articles published in leading academic journals, Dr. Perry has also authored or co-authored 4 books, including Growing God's Family, Addicted to Lust, Taking America Back for God, and The Flag and the Cross.
Hey, we're gonna see Dan McClellan on CNN here in a year or two.
Yeah, right. You want to know why not? Because there's room for one white straight guy, and here he is. Who knows if he's straight? Let's listen to Oron, Christian nationalism in the New York Times. This is what it means to be a Christian nationalist.
So I just don't see, even though the system treats him as just a dire threat, I think even another round of Trump, I guess they feel maybe they've drank enough of their own Kool-Aid where they have to see Trump as a threat, right? Like they've invested so much in his demonization and this boogeyman of whatever white Christian nationalism around every corner, that they kind of have to act with this level of fervor, even though I don't think Trump really represents the kind of threat to the system that they make it out, or maybe he really is. I don't know, but it seems like it's more.
He's just a threat to slowing down some of their other stuff, but I think at the same time they've also realized that they can make just as much hay with the demonization.
Yeah,
Cthulhu always swims left. One way stuff ratchets left, or the other way stuff ratchets left.
For them having to react.
That was kind of a Mencius Moldbug's point about you guys went and used your power to change that Supreme Court ruling, saying that, oh well, we're gonna overturn Roe v. Wade. As soon as we had the power, we just actually used it and we did it. And Mencius Moldbug says they'll snap back and they'll break your neck on it. You can't beat this cultural war. They'll get it back. They'll take it back. They'll undo it, and it gets some fervor in their gut. Now, Doug Wilson and Michael Knowles and all those other people, Ben Shapiro, they have pushback on that claim. They say, actually, that little issue wasn't ever the driver that people always thought it was. That's one of the reasons it had to be done by the Supreme Court, because it never had the backing to be done the proper way. But they also push back saying, like, so what? Right is right. I don't care what you say, Machiavellian Curtis Yarvin. Yarvin and maybe even some of the dissident right are talking about winning these long Machiavellian-esque games, and the other side is just saying right is right. And if you're a Christian, like an actual Christian, not the Christian nationalist, isn't just doing right is right and let the rest of the world work itself out, kind of the answer. I don't know.
Act in the way that they've kind of conditioned themselves to, rather than an actual threat that would throw their system into chaos.
Keeping your base, keeping your camp, which means the fundraising mechanisms, the people that can make a few phone calls, and there's a U-Haul truck full of bricks and shields to be deployed basically in any major city in the country. If you keep all of those people in a perpetual state of panic at all times at anything over some big boogeyman, whether that be Trump, whether that be Christian nationalism, the Republican Party, or even your neighbor that has an American flag flying on their flagpole in their yard in the suburbs, then all it takes is really one easily manufactured event to start and kick off another summer like we saw in 2020. And I think that if you can...
Yeah, that's always a risk of love. Yeah, because the George Floyd thing was so perfect, but every single year there's all sorts of things like that, and all that took in that environment is something kind of similar to it.
Right.
And I agree that they're trying to build up. I mean, they're always trying to build up panic of a great big boogeyman, like you said, to set off the extremities right on time. But I don't know. I saw somebody asking and talking about the Michael Brown case, and right in the middle of it, it was such an atom. They had a debate this week about Black Lives Matter and critical race theory again, where a guy once again tried to rescue and save critical race theory. And he pointed out, I don't know why the BLM people went with the Michael Brown case when they easily had this other case of that kid who got shot in the park. And the reason why it's Michael Brown and not the easier case that everybody agrees upon is because there has to be a level of disagreement for it to be the case. Like, you got to find the perfect wedge issue. Like they said, it's all about finding a wedge issue. It's not about finding a real atrocity that everybody can plainly see as an atrocity, even though that case where the kid was shot in the park wasn't a plain atrocity either. Just to push back on whatever that guy's saying. I mean, the kid was running around with a toy gun, and they say he was a 12-year-old kid in the park with a toy gun. You watch the video of it. 12-year-old kid was 6'4" running around with a black toy gun in a park. And it's kind of funny because John McWhorter did some research and looked it up and said how many incidences like this have happened to white kids, and he found something like 60 plus incidences of it. And
Into that allows you to act maliciously, or better yet, in a constant state like the left always likes to think that it is in, is just one major loss away from being, you know, in complete disarray. No longer we have any, you know, actual democracy. Everything goes down to hell in a handbasket. If you can keep yourself perpetually panicked, whether you believe it or not, and there will be plenty of people that do really buy into it, it means that you have the mechanisms to perpetually act like you're in wartime, spy on other people, arrest other people, and
the emergency powers tyranny just keep us in a state of emergency for, and that's the real
Ukraine.
methodology. The climate change coming up, and the white nationalism and all that stuff, and the bugs, the
Ukraine,
the sicknesses, and oh my gosh, we just need to take care of you. All we want to do is take care of you by having you live in a pod and eat the bugs and
and to do whatever is necessary to keep yourself in power.
Yeah, what this really does is allow them to constantly govern the state of exception, right? Because they're always in a, you know, everything is always 2 minutes to midnight. Everything is a threat to democracy. Everything is a threat to whatever. And so they are always, there's always an excuse for increasingly extreme abilities. We see this with almost everything, actually, whether it's the, you know, the pandemic or global warming or, you know,
I guess they said it all. Maybe we said it all. I'll delete it.
Trump and his, you know, minions. There's just always there's a rotating cast of boogeymen that have to be paraded in front of the American people to justify the total state's, you know, increased growth and the increase of its power. And so it doesn't matter what the threat happens to be today. The point of the threat is kind of always to, like you said, generate this panic that justifies what they're doing. And of course, this is a big part of the total state, is requiring every citizen to constantly like be pledging its loyalty. You have to, everyone has to constantly be terrified about what could come next. Everyone needs to like basically grant their will at all moments to the powers that be, or otherwise the entire thing's collapse. So you need every citizen to be maximally interested in politics and be obsessed with what's going on at every moment, because you need to be able to demand their total loyalty at any moment. They need to be signaling their allegiance at every moment. And this perpetual need for that is kind of what feeds that machine, whether it be Trump or one of the other, you know, existential crisis that is being thrown in front of the American people every moment.
Yeah, exactly. Like you had said, the state of exception, and a permanent state of fear means a permanent state of exception, to where you can never go back. You can't, you know, say or not be concerned about X, Y, and Z. That's why there's always a new, you know, eschatological threat that comes out of the left in their playbook, whether it be climate change, Trump, Christian nationalism, racism, whatever it is. It will always be existential. And that's sort of the nice thing about sort of the intersectional framework that you have is that it doesn't matter that there are differing interest groups or differing perspectives. They can all be used to serve these differing states of exception. But when boomer cons always make the joke that, you know, these guys are just miserable and they're panicked and like mentally ill. Well, yeah, because they have all these things to constantly pledge, you know, their allegiance to. But in doing so, that allows the total state to maintain its total control, for lack of a better term for play on words.
One of the points they talked about there's some word for it, I forget it, but there's a loyalty going on. Part of the problem of like globalism versus globalism versus nationalism, and part of what they're demonizing is just the word nationalism. It's both the Christianity and the nationalism, but they're also trying to make you stop and say, boy, that word's just inherently a naughty word.
Yeah.
And
what about the Christian globalists? Is that a problem?
Yeah, but that's one of the points, is they could even like say that, well, that's fine, because one of the things that's going on is, especially among that elite cosmopolitan class, and this is one of the criticisms from that dissident right that's I think is correct, is your leaders have more allegiance to their cosmopolitan foreign friends than they do to you.
Yep.
Totally.
And they're all buddy with each other and would sacrifice you in a half second, or even worse than that, just what the entire concept of your nation was all along to fit into that global cosmopolitan bullcrap.
Yep.
But I've always thought, well, not always thought, only recently thought, but now I see it better, that Mormonism, and it's the thing they're trying to demonize by what they've put out through Under the Banner of Heaven. No matter how much Dan McClellan wants to try to play with these guys, or that dude from the Atlantic who I always bring up wants to play with these guys, or even the bureaucratic heads of the church want to say, hey, we'll play ball with y'all. They're, whatever this is painting that picture. They are painting Mormons in that corner. The whole entire Under the Banner of Heaven show was an attempt to paint Mormons right into this same thing that they're demonizing. There was like 4 or 5 different shows dropped all at once.
What was that? There was one about like leaving it behind. I can't remember.
There was the one on Hulu of the lesbian couple, and then there's the one about Warren Jeffs and all that stuff. And then each one of them, they try to blur the lines between the extremists and the regulars.
Yeah.
And that drops all right at the same time that all this Christian nationalism drops.
Yeah.
Like that's coincidence. Like, come on, that's not coincidence. And I don't know. I mean, maybe the church or whatever, people who want to pretend the church, they want to push away and shirk the Meldrums and say it's not about this nation or something like that, as if Meldrums necessarily making that the biggest deal in the world. But because obviously, just like Doug Wilson, just like Meldrum, they think their religion is for the world. They don't think their religion is for the country. Like, come on, they believe this country is an awesome sacred starting point or whatever, but no, they don't have that Nazi blood and soil stuff going on.
Right.
And you guys, they're trying to make it seem like they do. They themselves would all bring their religion to the whole entire world if they could. They don't. They're not. They're less isolationist. Yeah, and I think there are people in the church who want to say, hey, no, we're part of the global thing. We're doing the global stuff too. And I really wish I could see inside this. I'm sure a ton of people do. Really wish we could see what the inside discussions are on all that, and know which way they're leaning and which way different people leaned on it or not. And I mean, I think some people kind of start to sniff out and pick and choose, some that lean one way and some that lean another way, but I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, it gets to be kind of a little bit, I mean, are you talking about like at the tippy tops of the church leadership?
Yeah. Conversations just between anybody who actually has any pull on which direction how do I even call it? Like, I mean, would you just call it like the corporate side? Because I mean, usually like when ex-Mormons say the corporate side, they're saying it sneeringly, but I'm talking about the side that actually has to work and do business in the world, because that's who actually has to deal with them. I know from my dad and myself, like over the church office building, people usually get surprised when they go and work there. My dad would always say to find out that they really do almost kind of separate church and state over there. Does that make sense? And it kind of shocks people. But if you think about it, I mean, that's maybe really how it's sort of supposed to go. But like, so I wonder, like in the board meeting level, in the level of acting as investors and the business end of it, whatever, are they a 501c3? Is it called something different if they're bigger than that?
I don't know.
Which ways, like what ways, what are they just playing? Are they trying to do the meek inherit the earth thing and just kind of playing it quiet through all of it? Or are they saying, well, we got to go this way, I mean, I think Holland was kind of saying, hey, in that talk, Mencius Moldbug would say, you went and lost the culture war, Holland, whereas other people might see it as saying like, hey, somebody kind of signaled to us that they see this crap,
right?
But then of course they immediately slap it down because he said the word wrong. We can take his metaphor and misunderstand it all we want.
Right. I think it's hard for them to I don't know. It's hard because I think that they're put in they have to kind of walk a fine line, you know what I mean? Because they got ESG all around them. They've got, it is a global church, and it's just like Doug said, you know what I mean? It's about everybody receiving their message, you know what I mean? It's not about politics and all that stuff, but that's being thrust upon them, you know, by all these.
So if you think about it, the place where you might have, like you and Jacob and Midnight Mormons, those of you who are not down with the World Economic Forum, one world government crap, but are still believing the church, if you think about it, what you guys have to assume a little bit what the church is doing is Moldbug's advice a little bit. Like keep it quiet, keep your head down, play behind the scenes, build the power behind the scenes, set up your chess pieces behind the scenes. Don't cause a ruckus that gets people to just come smack you right down and immediately label you like, look at these idiots. Oh, look at these idiots. Look at these. And maybe they learned that lesson from the Prop 8 stuff. Maybe they learned it the hard way, you know, not from some Machiavellian theory from Galaxy Brain Yarvin.
Yeah.
But I hope that's what they're doing, is being like the dark elves, as he says in that thing, or Strider. But I don't. One of the things is I don't know, and somebody like me, I would openly say that I don't have that faith. I lean towards, especially some of them there. I lean towards, I think they're going to fall into it. And
well, I think, in my opinion, I mean, I agree with you. I think, you know, it's, if, you know, take the render unto Caesar that which is Caesar's, you know what I mean? It's like, I think that, in my opinion, the top leadership is worried about the gospel. And
I think Peterson said in his admonishment, you guys stop worrying about the material and you start worrying about souls.
Yeah. And I think that is what they're worried about. But the thing about it is it's like, okay, well, what does it take to do that? Well, we want to be able to bring the temple experience to people all throughout the world. So there you go. Real estate, you gotta, you know, and you're in the ESG stronghold right now. You know what I mean? So it's like, they always said that the church pays for everything, pays for every temple, like up front. You know what I mean? So financing's not so much of an issue, but the facilitating of transactions is. You know what I mean? And they still, you know, those channels still are going to get somebody's, you know, bureaucratic hands are going to get in the mix, you know?
Well, I mean, but as you and I have talked about for a long time, I mean, I think that you think that money is more saving for a paradigm shifting moment. And they've been purchasing land that more and more seems to be extremely ahead of the game, thinking that way. If they're, you know, they're thinking of it in the right way. Everybody used to be like, did you know the church has a bunch of cattle? And right now at this point, it seems like, whoa, good call on that one.
Thank goodness. Yeah.
Yeah.
Bill Gates is buying up the rest of them.
Yeah. I mean, they could get to a point where those complete technocrat douche canoes go around and they try to end the amount of cattle that we have, not just say, hey, all these cattle are mine now. They could say, like, well, I'm trying to abolish this whole entire thing, so we're just not going to breed the cattle at all and just have the species die out, because we're trying to do that, and have them eat the bugs. So they're doing, I mean, you could look at it and say you hope they're doing all sorts of stuff, but kind of the question is, if they were playing the game that Moldbug said would be the smart way to play it, it wouldn't look different than it looks right now. You know, you'd have to just pay, like, Moldbug the Machiavellian. I'll use the word Machiavellian because his whole concept is kind of like art of war type stuff, you know, like keep your head down, do it, like use their weight against them and play along as long as it's useful, you know. So you see stuff like Jared and I talked about talking about them using diversity and inclusion language and all that sorts of stuff, and you could see that
they being who
the BYU put it in on some of their pages and stuff like that. Quick had the episode. Right. And I mean, we looked at how it wasn't Russell Nelson who used the language, but then on those pages of diversity and inclusion, they use quotes from Nielsen to make it look like he's saying all these things.
Well, it's all about the PR.
Yeah.
You know, it's all about the PR.
So the question is it just that? And they got to play about it so long. And there's some point where they're not making like a Jordan Peterson-esque I'm dying on this hill type stand, because as Moldbug would say, you can only lose that war. You can only lose that culture war. And maybe like I said, maybe they learned that on the Prop 8 stuff, because a lot of people don't remember and know that the church took the fall for the Prop 8 stuff. There was all sorts of other churches that were in on that.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
And the Mormon church got the blame for it. Like they got front and center blame for opposing Prop 8.
Yep.
That was voted down by black people. You know? And that's the church's fault. And that probably just that had them take the warning of the slapback that the out of the Moldbug word, like whenever you stand up, it's almost kind of like the Maoist thing, like the tall blade of grass gets cut down. Like they got the full force of the whole PR global homo campaign directed at them for 5, 6, 7, 8 years. And so, I mean, I guess you do have to take into account that they've weathered some of that storm.
Right.
But I don't know. What are they gonna do?
My opinion is that I think that I kind of expect the church just to kind of keep doing what we're talking about here is sort of like, I mean, I expect there to be a fallout, you know. I think the church is just going to kind of keep going, and they're just going to kind of, I mean, if they just stay focused and on the spiritual things, you know, the problem is there are some temporal side stuff, material side stuff to that, like, you know, the acquisition of property. I'm getting kind of tired of the PR game though, but I don't know. I guess that's probably part of it too. You know what I mean? Because
the thing is the moment's coming where they'll get forced into spots, because we know how that Hegelian left works, where it will be the left, and they probably say, why advance that moment? You know, why accelerate that moment? Because this right-wing side are acceleration. And we talked before that, like, we think that an actual real Christian would just wait for the moment of the moment where you got to say, yes, sir, true blue through and through. You wait for that moment. You don't go seeking it out.
Yeah, right.
But those moments are coming, and I think we're all kind of waiting. And maybe in some senses, you start feeling like an acceleration is because you kind of want to see them. Like, what's the moment when they come and threaten all accreditation at BYU because they have to make they have to kiss a ring, you know?
Yeah. Yep.
And I think we all kind of know, like, but the thing is the way that Hegelian left too is they trickle it in so hard, and there's like little moment, and they try to boil the frog, and it just seems like to a lot of people like it's just hold off, give in, hold off, give in, hold off, give in, hold off, give in.
Well, but I mean, the thing is like, if you look at kind of the whole progression, I mean, it makes you wonder, will the church like let BYU kind of go off and be their own thing and not own that anymore or something? I don't know. I mean, probably not, but
they've talked about that.
Yeah. Look what we've lost over the years. We lost the scouting relationship and that kind of stuff. And I think that's been a big hit, but there's been a lot of stuff that have been a lot of hits on Mormon culture, you know, and losses, you know, on Mormon culture. You can't play basketball anymore. No scouts, you know, and all that stuff. But although I did go on a young men's camp, and it was pretty much the same thing. It was gave me a little bit of hope, seeing my kids get to be able to experience some of the same stuff that I did, but just without like.
What about just like your random average? Because I remember when I was younger, there was it seemed to me so many more get-togethers.
You know, they just have like those road shows and stuff.
Road shows, those went away when I was real young.
Yeah, that we were kind of like, I don't even remember them doing it.
I got to see some, and they were awesome.
Did you?
Yeah.
I
was around when I got to see 2-3 years of it.
Yeah, they died out when we were young.
I remember them they didn't die out where I was. Like they got cut off, because wherever I was, they were rip roaring, exciting things.
Yeah,
everybody went. Everybody was laughing. Everybody loved them. Everybody talked about the role that they had all along while they were practicing them and learning them and all this stuff.
Well, and then the sports programs too. It's like, dude, we had a killer baseball diamond at my church that went over.
Mine too.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you did. And you know, when did they stop doing that? That seems to me like the mid 90s is about when they stopped doing the softball.
Yeah, it seemed to die away back when I was still in it. Yeah. And I remember when it was huge and it was big. I know some of the reasons. I remember some of the fights. I remember some of the injuries. And I remember some girls taking a softball to the face two different times.
Yeah. Yep. So the whole liability and
who knows if people sued him for it. My older brother actually cut his hand really badly on a fence at a softball diamond. But I mean, we didn't go sue the church or anything like that, you know.
But those churches that we, you know, grew up in, those diamonds are just sitting vacant, you know.
But if our whole entire point isn't that there should be no injuries, it should be you keep going even if there's injuries, even if there's damage, even if there's difficulty, even stuff goes wrong, even if there's fights, if there's basketball fights where stuff we should have pushed through. You know?
Well, I mean, I think that they should double down on living like a Christian way. You know, it's like, oh, you guys had an argument, you know, in softball. Well, you know, go to church on Sunday.
Yeah,
you know, and work it out.
I remember a lot of people learned a lot of stuff through those fights. You know, people became better friends through fights. That's sometimes how men are. You know,
that's totally. And I never talked about this, but I mean, this getting off. I remember when I was in 7th grade, I was kind of hot shit. You know what I mean? And I mean, 5 foot, 100 pounds, maybe in 7th grade. And there was a kid that we went to school with, and I kind of picked on him. And he was like probably like 8 to 10 inches taller than me. And I was just, you know, I was kind of hanging out with sort of the popularish crowd. And I was giving this guy hell. And we got in a fight. And I remember, you know, I got a couple decent hits, I thought. And a teacher came rolling up and, hey, you know, and I turned and looked away, and he socked me right in the eye. Gave me a total black eye, and I'm so thankful that happened. You know, we became friends after that. You know, we became friends after that. But you know, I had to learn that lesson. The answer to bullying is let the kids pop each other one a little bit.
Especially in the male world of it, you know,
and teach your kids to stand up for themselves and know how to defend themselves.
Yeah,
but see, that's part of this nationalism thing too. It's like, who are the people who are willing to stand up and defend the culture and the lifestyle and the country that they have? Those are the people that they're talking about. They're the ones that know how to defend themselves.
The people who know how to take a punch and keep on going.
And hey, what did Peterson say about that? Meekness. It's like the meek shall inherit the earth. It kind of blew my mind. I had no idea, but he talked about that being the term meek. One of the translations of the Bible said something akin to he that has a sword but knows how to sheathe it.
Yeah.
You know,
I remember one of the guys I looked up to so much when I was young. He was always in the stake presidency. I don't think he was the stake president. Maybe he was at one point, but he was always in the stake presidency. He was my friend's dad, and he was huge. He had been a basketball player in college, and he was just the nicest dude ever and the nicest guy you ever come across. And I remember he'd come to a lot of games because I played basketball at the Sun. He'd come and we'd all do stuff, and he was always like a really nice coach. He wasn't like some angry coach or something like that. You know, he was really cool and really friendly. You could tell he was into it. Then one time, years later, we finally played in a basketball game with him, and he was a rage monster. You know? And you want to know what? I respected him 1,000 times more for it. You know, I had no idea he had that in him.
Yep.
I had no clue all those years that was in him. He was scary. He was huge. He was giant. He got real mad. He was dunking the ball, and he was elbowing and pushing people around. He didn't get to fight. And then after the game, he's kind of embarrassed. He's like, oh, sometimes let myself get like that. I'm sorry, guys. And I was like, dude, that was awesome. One of the years of my really good friends who passed away a while back.
Yeah.
He was a monster, and I got to play football growing up with him. In high school. And in high school, in practice, I was the right guard and he was the left tackle, which means in practice, me and him banged heads every single freaking day forever. Nobody got to get punished more than me.
Yeah, I bet,
because
man.
I had to go up against this dude. Was the sweetest guy. Maybe I'll put it up here. I had a picture of him in the NTC with me because
Oh, you're talking about Dave?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I was thinking about Pete.
No. Pete was
I would hate to go up against any of those.
Pete was a center.
I probably hate to go up against Dave.
Yeah, two
more
guys
than Pete.
on my offensive line. They died young. But I never had to bang heads against Pete because he was more in the middle of it, and I was out on the outside. But Dave, I'm just talking about Dave was the big old sweetie. Pete was always kind of a tough guy wherever he went. But Dave was just a sweet old dude. He's the nicest guy, the biggest laugh, the biggest thing you ever come across. Mormon dude, Mormon kid. He was even getting recruited by BYU, but I think he kind of got amoebas on his mission. He lost a ton of weight. He was a monster. He was a monster. When it came time to play, he would rip you to shreds. And that's the Mormons I know. You know what I mean? That's what I think of when I think of Mormons.
He was Mormon Ivan Drago.
Yeah. And when I think of Mormons, I think of these guys. I think of droves and droves and droves of these guys. I think of droves and droves and droves of meek people. Meek who are as nice and sweet and as good as it comes, and watch out when it's time to really fight. And in both those cases, I got to see them be nice, and then I saw the moment. Where you're like, well, to use the under the banner of heaven term, these are dangerous men, but positively dangerous. Jordan Petersonly dangerous, not your bullcrap under the banner of heaven stuff. I mean,
that's the real danger, man.
Who stops those dangerous men?
Yep. The real dangerous men are the weak ones. And that's the thing. It's like, people who aren't self-reliant, they're reliant upon other things, and people who, I don't know, there's just that whole message going. And I think that is behind all that. I think it is behind that whole demonizing of like the term nationalist and all that kind of stuff. It's like we want to undermine strong people and strong institutions that create strong people. I mean, that's always been the church's hallmark, and maybe that's what Larson was like pointing at when he was saying that, but like they've always taught to become self-reliant and to all that stuff.
I really hope that it's just like that. The church is just like my friend Dave, and I'll say it, but Mike Christensen growing up, like these monsters who are just as sweet as you thought, and they are docile and being meek. And then when that moment comes, you go, holy crap. Oh my gosh, that is a monster. And I hope I'm honestly, as much as if we've teased or talked crap lately, that's what I'm rooting for. I'm rooting for that. I really am.
Yeah.
100%.
For sure. I know people like James Lindsay, and you have all these atheists that are like saying, hey, we need religion back, because that's the thing that I think provides people with heart and soul. For me, I know it's given me the biggest why.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Most of almost all I'm trying to talk about is the games. The games are playing on you. That's why I go back to like saying the St. Christopher thing. If you read the lore of St. Christopher, the Pajah talks about is what he was is just the guy who went and learned all the devil's tricks and then came back and betrayed the devil and told him like, this is all the devil's tricks. And that's why I identify it a lot. And if you get into it, sometimes you say, well, maybe the Christ never needed to know all the devil's tricks, or the Christ actually knew them all along or something like that. But still, I think all we're trying to do here is say, look at the tricks, look at the tricks, look at the tricks. That's all it is.
What's interesting, because like the weird thing for me is I feel like I'm kind of have more of a kindred spirit with a lot of people who have left. You know what I mean? And the people who, or like I said, like I've mentioned before, like the Jack Mormon type. You know what I mean? That the rough around the edges kind of people is sort of who I've always gravitated toward.
Well, right on. Let's Mormons.
Yeah, we got to do it.
Stay meek, but
stay meek.
I'm excited to see your teeth. But I also am critical of accelerations. So.
Just I don't know.
Yeah,
watching it play out.
Yeah, I want it to hurry up, but I don't want to accelerate it. But I want it to hurry up.
All right, man. I better scoot. My wife's home and everything.
Word.
All right, man. All right. Peace out.